culture is infectious. A winning culture is infectious. And a winning culture, you'd have to be a blind man not to see it. That's why I talked about this, I think towards the end of the season, maybe in the middle of the season. And I talked about UConn. And I told you guys that this year seems different. I think it's no secret that there was not a great team in college basketball this year outside of one. I think every team had a glaring flaw outside of one. And I talked about that in that video, in that segment, that UConn, it feels different. This feels like the Dante DiVincenzo, Jalen Brunson, Villanova team, or the Tyler Hansbrough, Danny Green, Harrison Barnes, North Carolina team. It just feels different. Or the Kyle Guy, Ty Jerome, DeAndre Hunter, Virginia team. It just feels different. Dan Hurley has brought a culture to, you know what it is, and this is why I think this UConn team, this is where UConn differs from South Carolina Gamecocks. South Carolina has players that I think could possibly be transcendent or could possibly be household names in the WNBA moving forward. There are some good players like Donovan Clingan. He's really good, 7 foot tall, a big man, but they don't really have a player that I think can do wonders in the NBA. But what they do have is a winning culture. And that is thanks to Dan. Again, we talked about South Carolina losing, I think, 5 starters last year. UConn lost a bunch of, I think, 3 or 4 starters last year to the NBA or to graduation. And to come back and be dominant. Look, do you understand? This UConn team did not lose a game. The lowest margin of victory that they had in the tournament was 12 points. This team, what that means is you had no shot going into the game. Do you understand how crazy that is? Do you understand that do you know how many halves they were up by 20 or more? I think there was 1 or 2 games they were up 30 at half. That is unheard of in college basketball. South Carolina was down. Look. UConn is a perfect example of a team that has displayed a winning culture. And they have knocked it out the park on every phase, with recruiting, with player retention, with quiet as it's kept. This is not going to be a good. This isn't going to be the best draft for the NBA at all this year. There's a lot of players that's on this UConn team that's probably going to go to the draft. Maybe 2 or 3 of them actually, but this UConn team and Dan Hurley has got to a point where it would be foolish to underestimate them. I'm not saying that they're going to rattle off 3, 4 straight, but it's no way that you can look at what we saw this year and not think that it was just different. They became the second team since the 2006 2007 Florida Gators to win back to back national championships. To put that into perspective, that is what, 17 years ago? 17, 18 years ago? No, 14. No, 17. I was right. 17, 18 years ago. And they did it in dominating fashion. This was one of the greatest college basketball teams we have ever seen. When we talk about margin of victory, when they obviously, I think they lost like 3 or 4 games, but when we talk about margin of victory in the tournament, this is one of the greatest runs we have ever seen. And this is from a team that lost their best 3 or 4 players last year to either the draft or graduation. And they were dominant. It's about culture. And the thing that people underestimate about culture, especially a winning culture, is the beauty of a winning culture is you can plug in anybody. I'm not saying that you can plug in anybody and your level of dominance is going to remain the same. Players are important. And you have to have the right players. But what I'm saying is a winning culture can make an average player look great. It's all about the time they put in, and it's all about the time that you put into them. And it just feels different with Dan Hurley, man. It just kind of like with Don Staley, you can tell that the players have a different relationship with Dan. It just feels like it doesn't even feel like a father-son thing. It feels like a brother thing. And that's very hard to do with a coach because there's always an authoritative view on them. But it just feels different with Dan. Yo, I don't know. It's tough for me to eloquently put how dominant this team was. And I'll put it in the perfect perspective. There was not one time in this entire tournament, and going into the tournament, there wasn't a time, I don't think, and I'm a North Carolina fan, there was not a time where I thought that there was a team that could beat UConn. Think about that. I am a fan of North Carolina, diehard North Carolina fan. Next time North Carolina is a national championship, I'm going to put my life savings on the line and try to go. That is how much of a fan I am. There was not one time where I thought North or UConn was going to lose. And in the tournament, especially like there was not a time where I thought if they were going to lose, it was going to be probably the largest upset in college basketball history. And that even is, more than when the Houston Cougars, I think, beat Georgetown or something. Or NC State beat Georgetown or whatever it was. I don't think, there was not a team close to UConn. Close. And that is coming from a North Carolina fan. That is looking at what we saw from Houston, what we saw from Duke, which eventually made it to the Final Four, NC State, or the Elite Eight, NC State, like Purdue. There was not a team close to UConn. That, especially in college, is a prime definition of a winning culture. And Quad is kept, again, I don't know if they're going to win it next year. I don't know. And honestly, it matters who you lose and who you gain, but I'm almost sure that UConn is going to be in the mix because of the winning culture that Dan Hurley has brought to this UConn team. Mind you, this isn't the first two national championships. They've had, Shabazz Napier. They've had Jeremy Lamb. They've had Rip Hamilton. They've had what's his name? Ray Allen. They've had Kemba Walker. They've had great players. But this just feels different. And that's no offense to them. The Charlie Villanueva teams, that's no offense to them. Ben Gordon. But I've never seen a team, and this even goes back to the, obviously the Lou Alcindor, UCLA teams was different. I wasn't alive to see those games, but for my lifetime, I'll just say, in my lifetime, I don't think I've ever seen a team as dominant in March than I saw this UConn team. Like they can be up 4 points and you thought it was over. Because, and we saw this with the national championship, against Zach Edey and Purdue. They were up 4 points. The next time you really started to pay attention, like, oh shoot, they're up 17 points. Like once they get on you, they get on you. It's a wrap. It's kind of like Houston to a certain extent, because when Houston this year, when they were up 3 or 4 points, because their defense was so good, it just felt like that 4 or 5 point lead was more like a 15, 16 point lead. Well, because UConn was a complete team and their offense was so good, that 4 point lead would turn into 17, 18 in a matter of 3 to 4 minutes because of how good they are on both sides of the ball. Winning culture. They don't have a... Yes, Killigan is probably going to the league, but they don't have a star player. And because of that, I think Tristan Newton won the most outstanding player of the tournament. Shouts out to him. Well deserved. But this UConn team is going to be here for a while because of the winning culture that Dan Hurley has brought. Dan Hurley has brought. So shouts out to the UConn Huskies for being the first team since the 06-07 Florida Gators that had a myriad of NBA players like Al Horford, like Joakim Noah, like Chandler Parsons. This UConn team became the second team or the first team since that Florida team to win back-to-back national championships. So shouts out to you guys. Much, much, much deserved. And honestly, about halfway through the season, it looked like a foregone conclusion that there was no team. Like, UConn was head and shoulders above the rest.
Oh man, you stayed to the end of the video. I appreciate you. If you like what you saw, be sure to hit that subscribe button so you'll never miss any content from your boy. You can also go back and watch past episodes, past clips, and don't forget that the Unpopular podcast, new episodes drop every Wednesday and Saturday. Appreciate you.